São Paulo's heart pulsated with a rhythm unlike any other. The favelas, with their haphazard constructions, were a testament to the city's unfailing spirit. As evening beckoned, the streets of the favelas throbbed with life. Boys, their faces slick with sweat, chased after a worn-out soccer ball, their shouts filled with the undying hope of becoming the next great soccer star. Street vendors hawked their goods, their voices a chorus of sales pitches, blending seamlessly into the cacophony of urban life. Amid the swirl of activity, the savoury aroma of pastéis, crispy, deep-fried pastries filled with meats or cheese, danced through the air, enticing all those who passed. Luiza manoeuvred her cab skillfully through the narrow streets. She relished the feeling of being intertwined with the favela's vibrancy, a part of its collective heartbeat. Her gaze often drifted towards the walls adorned with graffiti. These weren't just splashes of colour, they were the favela's soul narrated in paint, stories of love, loss, hope, and rebellion. These weren't just splashes of colour, they were the favela's soul narrated in paint, stories of love, loss, hope, and rebellion. In the distance, the soft rhythms of samba played, its seductive beats promising a night of dance and abandon. The tune seemed to emanate from one of the local botecos, small neighbourhood bars where locals congregated to discuss everything from politics to the latest telenovelas. However, as the sun began to dip, casting golden hues over the favela, a change was imminent. Ominous clouds, like dark ink blots, began to gather in the sky, casting their shadow over the lively streets. They moved with an urgency, threatening to unleash their torrents and drown the hustle and bustle below. Luiza's experienced eyes noticed the shift immediately. She had seen many a storm in her time driving through these streets.
Looks like rain is on its way,
she mused. A hushed expectancy filled the air. Street vendors began to pack up, mothers called out to their children, and doors and windows were hurriedly shut. Yet, in this impending gloom, there was a sense of continuity, a silent acknowledgement that life in the favelas, with its challenges and joys, would go on, rain or shine. And as the first droplets began to fall, Luiza switched on her wipers, ready to navigate through another twist in the tapestry of São Paulo's ever-evolving saga. The vast mosaic of São Paulo was home to many stories, and Luiza carried her own. Though her hands gripped the steering wheel of a cab, her heart held on to tales passed down from her Afro-Brazilian ancestors. The rhythms of candomblé ceremonies, the soulful melodies of samba de roda, and stories of the orishas, deities from Yoruba mythology, were woven into the fabric of her being. Born and bred in the heart of the largest favela, Paraisópolis, Luiza's caramel skin bore the sun's warm kiss, and her tight curls, inherited from her grandmother, bounced with every step she took. She was a living testament to her family's legacy, a lineage that spoke of resilience, love, and an indomitable spirit, having traversed the tumultuous terrains of slavery, colonization, and urban survival. Life in the favela was far from easy. Each day was a testament to her family's enduring spirit. Luiza, a single mother of two, worked tirelessly to provide for her children. She dreamt of a world where they wouldn't have to juggle between school and side jobs, a world where the echo of gunshots wouldn't interrupt their slumber. Each dollar she earned wasn't just currency. It was a promise to her children, Mateus and Livia, for a brighter future. Yet amidst the struggles, Luiza always wore an infectious smile, which she claimed was her most potent weapon.
It confuses life,
she'd often joke.
When it expects you to break down, you smile, and it doesn't know what to do next.
As dusk settled and the air grew heavier with the scent of impending rain, Luiza's cab slowed down to pick up a new passenger. An elderly black woman, her skin weathered like ancient parchment, climbed in. What caught Luiza's attention immediately were her eyes, pure white, devoid of pupils or irises. They held mysteries beyond comprehension, and for a moment, Luiza felt a deep connection, as if their souls had met in another life.
Boa noite,
Luiza greeted, her voice gentle. The old woman nodded.
Drive,
she whispered, her voice carrying the weight of ages.
I need you to take the Camino das Almas.
She continued, referring to a route that roughly translates to Path of Souls. Luiza hesitated. The Camino das Almas wasn't a typical route. It was an old path that snaked its way through lesser-known parts of the favela. Legend had it that it was the path taken by lost souls, those who departed but weren't ready to leave. While most regarded it as just a fable, the elderly often whispered tales of strange occurrences along that route. Shaking off the apprehension, Luiza responded,
As you wish.
and shifted gears. Little did she know that this ride was about to redefine everything she understood about the world, her lineage, and herself. The evening's shadows grew deeper, creating an intricate dance between the artificial glow of streetlights and the encroaching darkness. With each turn Luiza took, the old woman seemed to grow more reflective, her breathing mirroring the pulsating rhythm of the city's heartbeat. As they approached the almost mythical Camino das Almas, the woman reached into a worn-out leather pouch and retrieved a faded photograph, carefully handing it to Luiza at a red light. The cab's dim light revealed a young girl, dressed in period clothing, her posture defiant, her eyes staring into the distance. The most unsettling part? The girl's striking resemblance to Luiza. Luiza's heart raced, her eyes darting from the photograph to the familiar intersection ahead, then back to the photo. The buildings, the cobbled streets, even the old boteco, the local bar at the corner, all were unmistakably the same. But how was it possible? The photograph seemed to have been taken decades, if not a century, ago.
Quem é essa?
Luiza asked, her voice trembling.
Who is she?
The old woman leaned forward, her white eyes shimmering in the dim light.
The street,
She began, her voice a haunting whisper.
they remember, they've seen generations come and go, each leaving a mark, a story.
Luiza clutched the photograph tighter, her mind racing.
But this girl, she looks like me.
The woman nodded slowly.
She's a part of you. She's an echo of the past. A reminder that we're all intertwined with the tales of our ancestors. The favela holds memories, some joyous, others sorrowful, and sometimes it calls back.
By now, the weight of the situation was pressing heavily on Luiza's chest. The intersection loomed ahead, the very same one from the photograph. Every turn she had made somehow brought her back to this spot, as if time was folding upon itself over and over.
Why am I seeing this now?
Luiza questioned, desperation evident in her voice. The old woman sighed, her voice taking on a melodic cadence, reminiscent of the ladanas or litanies sung during capoeira circles.
The streets remember, and sometimes they seek to warn. Your path is intertwined with hers, but your destinies may differ. Beware, Luiza. The cycle can be broken, but you must tread cautiously.
Luiza's grip on the steering wheel tightened. The photo, the old woman's words, the relentless pressure at the base of her gut. It was a maelstrom of emotions and revelations. She needed answers, but more importantly, she needed to understand what was at stake. The favela wasn't just a maze of houses and alleyways. It was a repository of stories, of souls that had walked its paths. And tonight, Luiza realized she wasn't just driving on its streets. She was journeying through its memories. The old woman, sensing Luiza's determination, leaned back, her silhouette blending with the shadows. Remember, the streets are watching, and they hope you make the right turn. The soft hum of the car engine provided a stark contrast to the rapid pace of Luiza's heartbeat. She watched as the old woman exited the cab, with her ethereal aura, disappeared into the maze-like alleys of the favela. A gust of wind rushed past, carrying with it whispers of forgotten tales and the distant sound of a samba rhythm. The world around her seemed alive, pulsating with ancient energy. Shaking off the unease, Luiza refocused on her task at hand, navigating out of the favela and heading home to her family. She took a familiar left, passed by the mural-covered walls depicting stories of resistance and celebration, and cruised past. Feira de Rua, the local street markets where vendors hawked deep-fried pastés and potato balls with cheese inside, their scents mingling in the evening air. However, her sense of familiarity soon turned to confusion. The horizon began to warp slightly, and to her disbelief, she found herself right back at the same intersection, the Camino das Almas. How was it possible? She had driven straight. She had taken different turns, yet like a moth drawn to a flame, she was pulled back to this singular point. A rising tide of panic welled up within her. She tried another route, passing a group of children playing soccer in a makeshift pitch, their laughter echoing hauntingly. Yet after a few turns, there it was again. The same boteco, the same cobbled street, the same intersection. Desperation began to cloud Luiza's thoughts. She pulled over, her hands shaking as she clutched the steering wheel. Flashbacks of the faded photograph, the old woman's cryptic words, and the repeating landscape played like a broken record in her mind. Was this the street's way of warning her? Of communicating with her? Or was it a sinister trap she had unwittingly stumbled upon? As she pondered, a group of local youngsters approached, drawn by the unusual sight of a distressed driver.
Tudo bem, senhora?
One of them asked,
Is everything well?
concern evident in his voice.
I'm trapped.
Luiza whispered, her voice laced with trepidation.
Every turn I take leads me back here. I can't escape.
The youngsters exchanged glances, a shared recognition passing among them.
Ah, the Camino das Almas curse.
One murmured, his voice tinged with reverence.
Legend says that those who are chosen by the street are given a chance to alter their fate. But to break free, you must confront your past, present, and future.
The weight of their words bore down on Luiza. The favela was more than just a densely populated urban area. It was an entity, a living organism with its memories, joys, sorrows, and secrets. And she, for some reason, was now an integral part of its narrative. Determined to break free and return to her family, Luiza knew she had to confront whatever challenge lay ahead. With the echoes of the old woman's words in her ears and the collective wisdom of generations around her, she prepared to embark on the most significant journey of her life, one that transcended the boundaries of time and reality. With renewed vigour, Luiza slammed on the accelerator, the roar of the engine cutting through the dimming evening. She chose the widest avenue she knew, hoping that its length and direct route out of the favela would free her from the relentless loop. But despite her best efforts, the more she fled, the more tightly the favela's grip seemed to tighten. Driving past familiar street vendors, she noticed them whispering among themselves, casting her sidelong glances. Their hushed conversations, though barely audible, carried undertones of empathy, as if they had witnessed this phenomenon before.
Ela está presa.
One vendor whispered.
She's trapped.
Passing a school, she heard children singing a haunting rhyme, their voices echoing in the growing darkness.
Volta e volta novamente, sempre ao mesmo lugar. No cruzamento das almas, terá que enfrentar.
Round and round again, always to the same place. At the crossroads of souls, you will have to face.
The walls of the favela, painted in a riot of colours, bore graffiti that told of an eerie narrative. Depictions of cars going in endless loops, shadowy figures chained to an ever-recurring destiny, and a labyrinth with no exit seemed to mirror her own plight. The art vividly portrayed the struggles of the favela residents, the vicious cycles of poverty, the walls built by societal expectations, and the snares of a system that seemingly offered no way out. But it was at the intersection itself, the Camino das Almas, that the most harrowing encounters awaited. As Luiza approached for what felt like the umpteenth time, ghostly apparitions began to materialize. Each figure seemed to be from a different era, their clothing ranging from the old-fashioned attire of the 1900s to the more contemporary outfits of recent decades. One spirit, a young man with hollow eyes, bore visible marks of violence, perhaps a victim of the endless gang wars that once plagued the streets. Another, an older woman in a tattered dress, clutched a baby to her chest. the spectre of hunger and poverty etched into her features. As Luiza hesitantly approached, each apparition whispered cryptic clues. The young man murmured,
Find the hidden truth.
An older woman nearby, tears streaming down her translucent face, whispered,
The past holds the key.
The cacophony of voices, the weight of the collective pain and suffering of the favela's history, was almost unbearable. But among the cries of despair, Luiza also felt an undercurrent of resilience, of hope, and an indomitable spirit that refused to be subdued. With each clue, Luiza's resolve strengthened. These spirits, trapped in their own loops, were not just a testament to the struggles faced by generations in the favela, but also symbols of the resistance and determination that defined its people. Determined to break the cycle for herself and in honor of the spirits she encountered, Luiza decided to dive deeper into the heart of the favela, hoping to unravel the mystery of the Camino das Almas and find a way to finally set both herself and the trapped souls free. It didn't take long for Luiza to locate the old woman's house, nestled deep within the heart of the favela. It was an old, run-down dwelling, with walls that had seen better days, yet held an aura of antiquity and reverence. Hesitantly, she knocked on the rickety wooden door. No response. Taking a deep breath, she pushed it open. The interior of the house was dimly lit, filled with relics of the past, old photographs, Orisha statues representing Afro-Brazilian deities, and candles casting eerie shadows on the walls. At the center of the room stood the old woman, her gaze fixed on the faded photograph she'd shown Luiza earlier. The old woman said, her voice echoing eerily in the silence,
Do you understand now?
Who are you?
Luiza demanded, her voice quivering with a mix of fear and determination. The old woman's eyes, though devoid of sight, seemed to pierce right through Luiza.
Eu sou o espírito da favela, preso no tempo, refém de uma história que se repete incessantemente.
She replied.
I am the spirit of the favela, trapped in time, hostage to a story that endlessly repeats itself.
She motioned to the photograph, her fingers caressing the image of the young girl.
My daughter,
she whispered, tears forming in her blank eyes. The girl had been trapped in the same relentless loop decades ago, an embodiment of the inescapable cycle of poverty and violence that had ensnared generation after generation.
Ela tentou fugir assim como você. Mas fugir não é a resposta.
She continued.
She tried to escape just like you, but running away isn't the answer.
Luiza's heart raced as realization dawned. The favela's trapped spirits, the relentless loop she found herself in, the haunting children's rhymes, they weren't just supernatural occurrences. They were symbolic of the favela's deeply entrenched societal issues. Generations had been ensnared in the same patterns, struggling against the same adversities with no respite in sight. Breaking free, she understood, wasn't about evading the loop or escaping the favela's confines. It was about confronting the root causes, addressing the violence, the poverty, the lack of opportunities. Only by acknowledging and battling these challenges head-on could one hope to truly liberate oneself and the community. The old woman, sensing Luiza's realization, nodded.
Você tem a chama, a determinação para quebrar este ciclo. Mas lembre-se, a mudança verdadeira começa de dentro para fora.
She said, her voice filled with a mixture of sadness and hope.
You have the spark, the determination to break this cycle. But remember, true change starts from within.
With that, the old woman and the photograph both faded, leaving Luiza alone in the now empty room. She stepped outside, the weight of her newfound understanding pressing down on her, but also lighting a fire within. The path ahead was clear, and it wasn't just about escaping the loop. It was about breaking the cycle for herself and for the generations to come. As Luiza's cab came to a halt at the very intersection that had haunted her, the ambient sounds of the favela seemed to grow muted, replaced by a palpable silence. The encroaching twilight made the long shadows even more pronounced, the streets bathed in an eerie half-light. Apparitions began to appear, each ghostly figure more tangible than before, their faces etched with stories of despair, longing, and memories of times gone by. With a deep breath, Luiza took the bold step of exiting her cab. The ground felt different under her feet, as though she was standing on hallowed ground, a testament to years of unshed tears and unspoken stories.
I see you.
She began, her voice firm but gentle. She addressed the spirits, recognizing faces of young children, hardened youths, and elders, each trapped in their own timeline, victims of the favela's cycle of pain.
I acknowledge the weight of our history, the tears shed, the dreams lost, and the sacrifices made.
The apparitions, drawn to her words, began to move closer, their ghostly forms swirling around her. The wind picked up, and the air was thick with emotion. Voices from the past began to echo around her, speaking in a chorus of whispers.
Fome, violência, dor, esperança.
They murmured.
Hunger, violence, pain, hope.
As the whirlwind of memories threatened to consume her, Luiza mustered all her strength. She thought of her children, the future she wished for them, and the change she now understood was vital not only for her family, but for the entirety of the favela's community.
Chega! É hora de quebrar o ciclo.
She shouted defiantly above the cacophony.
Enough! It's time to break the cycle!
With outstretched arms, she tried to embrace the swirl of spirits, as if trying to absorb their pain and offer them solace. The intensity of the moment peaked as the very fabric of time seemed to warp around Luiza. Visions flashed before her eyes. Children playing without fear, schools thriving with education, art replacing the scars of violence, the favela vibrant with life, hope, and progress. A dream, her dream, their collective dream. And then, as suddenly as it had begun, the whirlwind ceased. The apparitions began to fade one by one, their faces now reflecting peace and gratitude. The streets of the favela, which had turned into an arena of timeless confrontation, returned to their usual bustling self. Luiza, drained but resolute, slowly made her way back to her cab. She now carried a heavier responsibility, not just as a mother, but as a beacon of hope for the community. The climax of her supernatural journey had, in truth, only marked the beginning of her real-life mission: to spearhead change and break the chains that had bound the favela for far too long. The first rays of dawn sliced through the cloud cover, illuminating São Paulo's sprawling landscape. The distant high-rises of the city centre reflected the morning light, and even further, the silhouette of planes taking off and landing at Guarulhos International Airport could be seen, a reminder of the world beyond and the vast opportunities it held. The favela, caught between the bustling metropolis and the sprawling airport, seemed to breathe a sigh of relief. The streets, once a maze of challenges, were slowly but surely charting a path to hope. Luiza strolled through her familiar surroundings, noticing how the vibrancy of the graffiti had shifted. They now spoke of dreams and aspirations, of kids wanting to fly planes from Guarulhos or become entrepreneurs in São Paulo. The aroma of pão de queijo and pão na chapa meandered through the air, grounding her in the present, even as visions of a better future danced in her mind. The laughter of children playing felt different, unburdened. A nearby school's wall sported a new mural of a massive tree, its branches reaching out, almost as if trying to touch the plains in the hopeful blue skies above. With newfound clarity, Luiza set up Cruzamento de Esperança in a rented space. The community centre, situated between the heart of the favela and the edges closest to downtown, symbolised the bridge between their current lives and the expansive world of possibilities. Over time, Cruzamento de Esperança became more than a centre. It was the pulse of the community. Kids who once dreamt only of escaping the favela now aspired to travel the world, perhaps even pilot one of those planes they'd watched land at the airport. The spirit of the old woman had shown Luiza the looping intersections of their lives, but it was the combined will of the community that paved a new path forward. Luiza would drive her cab all over São Paulo, sharing tales of the favela's resilience with passengers from all over the world. turning her once entrapping vehicle into a vessel of stories and hope. Years went by, and the legend of the looping intersection grew. Yet, it was no longer a haunting tale, but a narrative of metamorphosis, inspiring every new generation to dream bigger and fly higher, perhaps all the way from the streets of the favela to the runways of Garulhos and beyond. Epilogue. Intersections of hope and despair, a possible future. São Paulo, with its sprawling urban landscape, was a city of contrasts. The tall, gleaming skyscrapers of the financial district cast shadows over the colourful, chaotic and resilient favelas that snaked their way through the city's topography. A mosaic of wealth and want, it seemed the two worlds were irrevocably separate, yet, at closer inspection, they were deeply interconnected, each a reflection of the other's triumphs and tribulations. In the business district, executives would discuss deals over cups of coffee, brewed from beans harvested by hands in the rural outskirts, hands not very different from those in the favelas. Luxury apartments were built by the same people who returned to their homes in the favelas each evening, their sweat and labour forming the very foundations of São Paulo's opulence. There was an uncomfortable truth. The luxury and affluence of São Paulo's elite were built on the backs of the marginalised. Yet it was also this marginalised community that brought vibrancy, culture, and undeniable spirit to the city. The samba rhythms, the tantalising street food, the iconic carnival, these were Brazil's heartbeats, and they pulsed strongest in the favelas. However, this symbiotic existence had its costs. The wealth gap, systemic prejudices, and a history of neglect had made the favelas into pressure cookers of despair. The dreams and aspirations of countless souls were trapped within, their potential limited by societal constructs. For Brazil to truly thrive, this dichotomy needed addressing. It wasn't sufficient for the two worlds to merely coexist. They needed to intertwine, to understand each other, and to grow together. Innovative programs started emerging, spearheaded by individuals like Luiza and supported by progressive entities. Scholarships for favela youth, business partnerships between the favela artisans and city-based enterprises, urban development projects that aimed to improve infrastructure without erasing the favela's cultural essence. The city slowly buzzed with change. But the real transformation was ideological. It began with acknowledging the shared humanity between the penthouse and the favela dwelling. It grew with understanding that the richness of Brazil was not in its GDP, but in the dreams of every child, whether gazing at the skyline from a luxury condo or watching planes fly overhead from a favela rooftop. The story of São Paulo was not just of Luiza or the old spirit woman. It was the story of every individual who called this city home. And as the sun set, painting the sky with hues of hope, one could almost envision a São Paulo where intersections didn't loop but led forward, towards a fairer, more equitable Brazil for all.
We hope you have enjoyed this episode of Quantum Dispatches and stay tuned next week for another thrilling adventure. Thank you for listening.